remember Yik Yak?
That's some is that some Canadian shit?
No, you remember like they tried to make Ello a thing, Ello and Peach and all that, and then Yik Yak was like some random one.
I remember Peach. I don't know the other one.
Yik Yak?
Remember what?
Yik Yak was like a anonymous social media platform. Sort of.
Oh yeah, no, I didn't know because I remember when they used to have like ask a question on fucking Facebook and people would just send foul shit to you. Yeah, it's like, why are you such a bitch ass motherfucker? And it's like, yo, yeah, show your face, you coward.
Yo, you ever have beef on Farmville?
Another one I didn't participate in, man.
Ruby, does Yik Yak hold any like? Where does Yik Yak stand in your personal pantheon of like secondary social media things?
I thought it was like very, very interesting because it was location based. And so it kind of had the feeling of being in like a misconnections section of Craigslist at all times, but also instead of looking for love, people were talking shit.
It's so like, yo, I passed you on the train today. You look like dog shit. Don't ever leave the house like that.
Exactly. With a girl wearing the red dress in my calculus class, you fucking suck.
You dumbass, you don't know pie? Like, yeah, fuck out my face. Yeah.
So, welcome to another edition of Nersey's Guide to Ethical Hating. My name is Drew, and my co-hosts are... You guys got to say your name.
Yeah, Slava Pastuk.
Trey.
And our guest today is the author, scholar, online anthropologist, philosopher, poet, Ruby Justice Thelot. You are the author of a book called A Cyber Archaeology of Checkpoints, which, deals with online fan communities in a very specific way. Can you tell us a bit about it before we jump into everything?
And it's out for pre-order. So if you are interested in digital communities, and specifically it's about one that lived under the comments of a YouTube video, it's called The Cyber Archaeology of Checkpoints. The community is called Checkpoints. And they lived under a YouTube video for 10 years before YouTube deleted the video. And we lost everything, the comments, the video, the entire community. And the book is about my efforts to retrieve it through the work of a Reddit user called Rebane 2001. So it's 2 essays, an interview with Rebane 2001, as well as 100 checkpoints. And it tells a story of this community, how we essentially archived all that information and how it now lives on forever.
Oh, cyber ethnographer. This is a term.
Oh,
that's nice. The term that I usually use, yeah.
Well, before we kind of get into the topic, do you want to explain what you mean by cyber ethnographer?
Does it have to do with cybering?
Specifically, I only do ethnography when I'm cybering. No, it's just the study of digital communities, which is something that I started about a decade ago, first as a participant, and then figured out that there were people who were interested in learning more about the hows and the whys of digital communities, and I started writing about it. And at first, the people who were interested were mostly academics, and then sort of expanded from there into different realms.
And
was it like? Oh no, I'm sorry. Go ahead, Drew.
Oh, I was just gonna say you have a term that you use that I really like, which is being online. Do you want to kind of explain what that is?
Yeah, being online, that's my @ So @being online, Twitter, Instagram, TikTok. And essentially it's a spin, of course, on the Heideggerian terminology of being in the world. So in trying to get an understanding of the phenomenology or the experience of being on the internet, of course, there was being with others, there was being in the world, and I wanted to come up with a third term that best described the experience that was halfway between physical and digital, halfway between your actual self and a projection of yourself. And that term became being online, and that became my at.
Cool. And
Wait,
yeah.
so are you the person who like popularized that phrase?
I probably wouldn't say that. But you know, Heidegger popularized the term being in the world in the 30s or whatever. I don't know that anybody else was using it, but I don't want to claim, there's probably some guy somewhere who published a paper or at some point.
Fuck that guy.
Yeah, I was about to say, you're better than me, man. I would have taken that claim to fame. It would have been trademarked by now if it was me. So yeah.
Well, you are definitely the most intellectual guest who has dared step in the fucking chamber of
in the Nersey octagon.
Yeah,
you're the Jordan Peterson of Nersey at this point. But, yeah.
And I apologize in advance for like the dumbness that you will be subjected to. This is like, I think I told you when I invited you on, this is like the dumb guy version of the culture journalist, sort of.
Not even.
No,
I'm with it. I'm with it. I like to just talk, and it doesn't have to be. I spend a lot of time teaching students and stuff, so I don't. It's fun to just not have to use. You just
turn your brain off. Last week we talked for like 20 minutes about Drew shitting his pants, which he claims he didn't do, but okay.
It's pretty clear that he did. Yeah,
he definitely did it.
Yeah, talk about culture, you know.
Look at him now. Look how nervous he is to talk about this because he knows.
He still has not said, I did not shit my pants. So, like, yeah. And it's a little too late for him to try to claim otherwise. So, yeah.
All right. Well, I
trying to change the subject.
No, I'll just I tried to change the subject before you brought this up via our text thread, trying to get Slava to ask Ruby about his Drake symposium.
I'm sorry. Okay.
But before we do that, I will talk about the time I shit my pants. All right. So
yeah, put it on record. Yeah, put it on clear the air. Yeah.
Okay. 2007.
23. Oh.
I have just graduated high school. I am on my way back from attending Bonnaroo.
It was a balmy day. I could see the heat streaks in the sky.
It was a dank and dark day. The sky was angry and expressing its anger through like some medium heavy rain that had just begun. I had dropped off a passenger in Asheville.
Oh.
And I was getting back on the interstate. It was like a short ramp, and there is a Dodge Ram truck just parked on the fucking entrance ramp. I do not notice this because I am fiddling with my iPod mini that was purple, putting on a Counting Crows song. When I look up, I see the Dodge Ram. I do not dodge the Ram. I slam on my brakes. I strike the Ram. My car is totaled. The airbag deploys. At some point, a light nugget is emitted amid the mortal fear. I have nothing to be ashamed of. If you got in a serious car accident,
I've been in a few. I never shit my pants. I've been in a few. Never shit. If you had said like I hit the car so hard, like my rectum couldn't do shit but let everything out, man. The airbag hit me in the gut, like I didn't have a choice. But you said it was from fear, which makes it a little worse.
I mean, I'm just saying, like, okay, if you run a marathon. If you know someone who has run a marathon, you know someone who has shitted their pants.
Yeah, I think you're in the clear with the car accident. You're good.
Yeah, I shit my pants 4 years ago in jail because I ate too many kiwis.
Again, I feel like you're in the clear because you're in jail. You know what I mean? Again,
but that's how you have to tell that story.
You guys are both
right?
in the clear. You know.
Anyway, speaking of none of that, Ruby.
I love how the black people involved in here are like, yo, even if I shit my pants, I'm never talking about this shit. Like,
I'm going to my grave, of course, with that kind of information, if there was such information.
For all y'all know, I've shit my pants a negative amount of times. Where like I can shit my pants twice this year, and I'm still never shit my pants. Like that's all y'all know.
That means we're net neutral in this chat. Then, thanks to you. Okay, are we ready?
Yeah.
Okay. So you love Drake? Okay, sorry. So Ruby, Ruby, you just hosted something called the Sixposium, right?
Yes.
Am I saying that right, or is it Sixposium because you are French?
Sixposium because Drake speaks English.
Okay. Well, arguably. What was the Sixposium?
Simply put, it was an academic symposium on the field of Drake studies. You have Shakespeare studies, you have Yeats studies, not Yeat the rapper, but Yeats the poet. You have, studies of a bunch of different authors, and I thought it'd be interesting to focus on what I consider to be one of the most influential writers of our time, which is Drake.
Quentin Miller. Okay, sorry.
So that was specifically it. So it was the idea that if we have important cultural figures, I think we should study them not just as celebrities or people who buy shoes and make songs, but understand the potentially existing, deeper layers of cultural impact, hidden meanings, different angles of inquiry towards the field of Drake studies. So that was the main idea behind it.
Do you know what All Things Fresh is? Does that ring a bell for you?
No, what is that?
All Things Fresh was the original fan page dedicated to Drake. It was run by Megan out in Houston, and it rebranded to just OVO blog. But it holds a special memory because it was called ATF, and he shouts out ATF early on in his music. And one Drew Millard, when he was editing a piece, he had to clarify whether or not Drake was talking about the Alcohol, Tobacco, and Firearms Bureau of America because he kept shouting out ATF, ATF. But I just say that to say that's an interesting musician because he doesn't really have like a crazy like stan culture, does he?
I mean,
I think that's debatable, honestly.
That's how. I mean, I would say so as well. I mean, we're talking about a person who maybe not Taylor Swift level, but has just sold out an entire tour and is about probably to do the same thing again with the J. Cole tour. We're talking about a person who, when he drops an album, goes #1 on Spotify. So we can talk about, I guess, in the context of this conversation, the different levels of fandom. This specific inquiry into Drake is not specifically about whether or not he had, like, it wasn't fan studies. It was more somewhere between cultural or literary studies of Drake, I think would be a better way to place it. Someone could have done actually a fan study analysis, because I would say that there isn't a clear demarcation. Like, there aren't Swifties for Drake, really, it seems.
I don't know, man. Like, you had people trying to convince us Tootsie Slide was good. Like,
but they're more fickle.
They're stands of Drake. Like,
they're more fickle, though. They'll bail. They'll flip flop. Taylor Swift fans will stick with her. Drake fans will come and go.
That's a fair point.
It may also be like I think in hip hop there is this. There's a different culture of fandom than versus like in sort of female pop music. Like, Taylor Swift has a lot of stinkers, but you'll never hear like a fan. I'm hopefully this. I know that the Swiftie army is quite strong, but there's a little difference in how people interface with their celebrity, and you can't go a day without seeing on Twitter someone claiming that XYZ rapper, which a year ago they loved is now flopping. People kind of love to hate on their faves and hip hop in a way that is not done with sort of the fandom of female musicians, Beyonce, Taylor Swift, Ariana, etc.
Well, actually, I was going to bring up Nicki Minaj as the comparison to Drake because their careers came up in the same time, but Nicki has fans that some would say kind of ruined fandom online.
Yeah.
So Nicki has accomplices, dude. Like, yeah, that's the thing. Like, Taylor Swift does not directly tell her stands like, "Yo, go out and ruin this person's life," but Nicki Minaj definitely, like, yeah, is basically a gang leader.
Who will get the first RICO charge for having a fandom?
That's a good question, actually, because I don't think that's outside the realm of possibility within our lifetime to see something like that.
Well, I mean, Juggalos basically got called a terrorist organization, so like they got a leg up on this. Like, even though they're the complete, I'm not gonna say the complete opposite of Nicki Minaj stands and shit, Barbies, but
Barbs.
What are they? Are they Barbies? Barbs, yeah.
Barbs. They can't use Barbies for trademark reasons.
Oh, fair enough. But like, yeah, man, Juggalos just kind of are on their own side doing their own thing, where like, you know, Barbs are like, if I wasn't a 13-year-old from Japan, I would come to your house and kill you. Yeah.
But why doesn't Drake have those kind of fans? Or what has precluded Drake from having that level of fandom? Like, are there tiers of fandom?
Of course. I mean, there is an understanding of the levels of dedication. And I will say that as far as artists goes, Drake has a lot of fans. He has a lot of people who listen to his music. In the classical understanding of what a fan is, he has a lot of them. They listen to his music, they go to his concerts, which are the two main activities that would like say in the music sphere. Now, what the Nickis, Taylors, Arianas, Lady Gagas of this world do is that they are able to create a social identification with the celebrity and the fandom. I.e., Lady Gaga is able to portray herself as Mother Monster. Mother Monster represents inclusivity, LGBTQ issues, and a whole slew of potential, maybe like something of the meat dress, vegetarianism, and so there's a whole series of concepts held within the framework of the persona of the celebrity, which a Gaga, a Nicki, a Taylor embodies. That if I ask you what does Drake stand for,
money in the city's he from?
It's kind of unclear.
Birkin bags.
Well, it's the same thing Nike stands
like
for.
Toronto would be one of them, right?
Yeah.
I mean, I guess like maybe. I mean, I wanted to ask you this later in the conversation, but I'll just do it now. But is there something like Lacanian about standom rather than fandom?
Oh, that's a great question. I don't.
Let's explain what whatever you said was for
that's like
people
a cleaning
who might not
solution,
know.
right?
Yeah, that's what they. Yeah, that's what they started at the Fabuloso in the deli. Yeah. But let's say if one of the listeners, and definitely not one of the hosts, didn't know what that meant, could you explain that?
I mean, do you want to do it, George? You can do it.
Somebody who knows what it means, because clearly one of the hosts does not, and I'm not saying who it is. But
I'm gonna fuck the term up. But Lacan was a French psychoanalyst who had this big theory that like once we are born, we leave the safety of the womb, and we are always sort of seeking the safety of the womb. That we are seeking the safety of the womb through this thing that he called, and this is the part where I'm going to need Ruby to correct me when I fuck this up. Le petit object R.
Le petit object R, yeah. So exactly, le petit object R is the thing you're trying to get to, and the big other is this like unattainable thing. Lacan, French analyst, sort of post-Freudian thinker. Same ideas that you get in Freud. Like you have the ego, that's the real self, and then for Lacan, there's this very important stage in the life of the child, which is the mirror stage, when the ego starts to recognize itself in the reflection, right? There's the gaze, and then the baby sort of touching around to see whether or not he, she, they understands what it is. What happens when we apply the Lacanian mirror stage to digital culture, specifically one where you can have a projection of the self, is that you not only have your ego, which is your real self, this is me talking to you, but you also have an ideal digital self, which is the imago, which lives in the hyperrealm. And that is mediated both by the other and both by yourself. And so something very interesting happens when you're at the cinema. This is something that Roland Barthes, another French thinker, talks about. He says, when you're at the cinema, people don't lean back into their chair. They press themselves into the screen because they want to identify with the hero. Mm-hmm. In a similar fashion, and this is like kind of off the cuff, because this is such a great question, the stan versus fan. There may be a different type of identification from the stan versus the fan. The fan is consumptive, meaning they listen to the music and they buy the tickets. And the stan is the one who presses against the screen, trying to identify with a celebrity. This is a brand new idea, so I'd have to think about it more. But I like that as a first sort of thought as to what that difference may be.
Yeah, this is going to be the first podcast in history that comes with a glossary. Yeah, footnotes and shit. Oh wow, Ruby, this might just be your podcast now.
You've defeated all of us.
Every week you just invite a few dum-dums to it and you explain stuff to us. Oh wow, okay, yeah.
If there's anything I can explain, let me know. I hopefully this was clear as a concept, or it's kind of like a new idea, because I never thought about that difference.
I have a question.
I've never heard of this before in my life. And
how different? Sorry, Trey. Sorry. Go ahead.
No. I'm still forming questions I want to ask in my head. You take it away, Slava. Yeah.
I just in the way that someone is a fan of Drake, can you be a fan of Nike? Like that, it feels close. Can you be a fan of brands, or does it have to be a fan of a person for it to be fandom that's reflected in your inner womb? Or whatever.
I feel like I get a lot of flack for being a fan of Drake because I make music with independent and underground artists, and but the funny thing is I'm a fan of Drake because it's perfectly done. And I'm fascinated by music that's created fucking perfectly down to the tone of voice. Every little drop, every little thing I know is going to sell and sell well. And for his fans, it's going to be perfect. And I'm just fascinated by that process. It's almost like I'm barely a fan of Drake the artist. I'm more of a fan of what is presented when it's done, because I know it's done so well for its goals.
And this is actually an interesting point that you're making, because when I think about the rappers that you work with, Joe, is it okay if I say on air
of course. If someone I worked with, it's public knowledge.
Yeah, gas them up. Get Joe exactly Ruby. 61 more cents in Spotify.
If it's not unreleased, then yeah.
All right, so yeah, Ruby, are you familiar with Billy Woods, the rapper?
Of course, yeah.
So Joe is Billy's engineer, and he has put out records on Backwoods.
Damn, Billy's the one who had that record with More Mother, right?
Yeah,
yes.
yeah.
That is the coolest record I've ever worked on. That's so fucking
that was an amazing record, yeah.
Unbelievable.
And Joe also has done a record with Fatboy Sharif, if I'm not mistaken.
Okay.
And Joe has also produced my favorite early 2010s underground rap song, which is what's the name of the song? It's by Lakutis.
My favorite song I don't know the name of.
Yes. I'm a Spider.
I'm in the Forest. I'm in the Forest by Lakutis. Yes, yeah. That's a song in which Lakutis invokes something called the 7 spiders of hip hop.
Go on.
It's made up, so he can't
No,
really,
no,
he
no,
can't
please,
really
no,
go on.
please, no, Drew. What in your mind did that mean? Because it sounds like it resonated with you. Like, what are the 7 spires of hip hop? You don't have to get specific, but just even as a concept. Okay.
Promethalox, Borathazon, Samulus, Zoron.
These are all college football names. Like, yeah.
Yep. Brightetriol, Creep, Jasper, Litralodon, Zamphuxotorp, and Arneon. 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7.
Yeah,
8,
that yeah. I was about to count them too. I was like, yeah, it's like that's more than 7.
There was no editing.
But anyways, yeah, the artists that you work with, Joe, I wouldn't say that I'm like a Billy Woods stan, but I listen to Billy Woods and I'm like, I feel like I know this person. Like, I feel like this person's sensibility is the same as mine, and I am willing to support him in a way that if like I were younger would probably be called like stan behavior.
I get that, as opposed to Drake. You know what I mean?
And I mean,
but like Drake's also weird because like I feel like over the past few years we've recognized like, yo, Drake's not a rapper, he's a pop star. Yeah, he's not trying to be Jay-Z, he's trying to be Beyonce. And he still doesn't have that stan base. And like, is that because like, and like, there's a lot of different ways to think about that. Like, you could immediately jump to like the race thing or whatever, but like, even like, you know, a lot of women singers of our time or whatever, they have their own stan bases and shit. You still have people who ride or die for Azalea Banks. You know, like it's.
I will mention there is one place where I think we cannot discount the percentage of people in Toronto who I think would maybe be called stans.
Slav is shaking his head.
No, you don't disagree?
I finish your point. I don't want to.
I was going to say that when I lived in Toronto, the radio would play Drake constantly. If you played it in a club, people, that was around Scorpion time. So, there was he felt, very ubiquitous on the radio, in the clubs. People were talking about the album. And there was also a feeling because of, sort of the status dynamics in the city of like, if you were with certain creatives, you were at a certain degree of separation from Drake, right? And so there was like not a Barb kind of fandom, but a specific kind of fandom and interest in the person and the music, in that context. But you live in the GTA right now, Slav, so I'm excited to hear what you have to say.
I completely agree with your second point about the fact that there was a lot of people who were trying to kind of become closer to him as a result of the business opportunities they could afford. I also agree with the point that he was like omnipresent for a time. Every radio would, you're right, play his songs, but that's also because there's laws that make it so that you have to play a certain amount of Canadian content. Now, obviously, there's enough to choose from that they don't have to play Drake, but they do just because he is so popular. I just don't think that I've ever met anybody who's a stan for him, in that anybody who would say anything negative about him, they would like confront them and be like, hey man, that's wrong. Actually, he's really good. And I don't want to hear anything otherwise. People who have OVO merch will admit to him being a little bit corny. And I guess that's where the divide comes in, is I don't think there's anybody who would ride for Drake who's not directly on his payroll in the same sense that somebody would ride for even like a Cardi B.
Okay, real quick question. You guys have like a homegrown quota for like songs you have to play on the radio?
33%.
That's such a good idea.
Yeah, it'll be like there's different levels. So it could be a songwriter who's associated with the song. It could be someone who produced the song, even if it's an American singer.
The loophole.
Oh,
the loophole.
Okay, yeah. So like Murder Beats just producing a bunch of shit and that counts. Okay.
Right.
Fandoms like didn't just come about, right? Like they've been going on for a while, but like, can you talk about kind of like the early origins of you know, just like kind of niche fandoms and stuff, and like when they stop being a niche thing. And yeah, because that, I don't want to get too specific because I feel like you got a lot of shit to talk about because you're literally the smartest person we've had on this podcast so far. No offense to anybody else who's been on this podcast, but this feels like some NPR shit.
No, this is objective.
It's hard to specify like when fandoms began, because from the moment where you have the figure of the author, you have people who like them, you have people who hate them. Now,
yeah, but I mean, like, was it like people were going crazy for Shakespeare back in the day like this?
I mean, kind of, especially like in the Elizabethan English, not English, England rather. There were people who loved to go to the theater, and people who that was the thing that they liked, and people who hated Shakespeare and they loved Ben Jonson, right? And they had like their favorite playwrights. And similarly, in ancient Greece, there were specific actors you really wanted to see perform the tragedies, and those were the folks that you really, if they were performing at the whatever Agora, Acropolis, whatever, that's the people you wanted to see. I think one thing that definitely tilts fandom from something that is communal and highly social, from the theater to the hand of the individual, is not only the printing press, but also the dissemination of books into the hands of individuals across the Western world. So when you start having the culture of the novel, that really drives up a culture of fandom for specific authors. Now, that fandom is experienced in ways that I don't think we would consider to be fandom now, because it was somewhat missing the communal aspect of it, because it was you in the book and not you and a group of people reading the book. But some of the early examples which I love to draw upon is when Gert published the Pains and Sorrows of Young Werther. The book hits so hard, and so the TLDR in the story: this guy falls in love with this woman doesn't want him. He sends her all these letters, and at the end, he kills himself. The book
been out for like 500 years, but I don't think you need to worry about
no spoiler alert. But it hits so hard that there was a wave of Werther suicides because people were just so drawn by and enamored with the character that they felt compelled to live the same fate as young Werther did. And
oh my God.
I think it just speaks to the power of media in general to influence and really move us. Because to be a fan essentially is to be moved to the point of wanting an affiliation. And I think we forget that sometimes. We do things that we say like, Taylor Swift is just popular because she's popular. But she's popular because she moved people to the point where they decided that she was going to be the person they would identify with. They could have done Britney Spears. They could have done Christina Aguilera. They could have done any other person who was popular at the time, but something about her message made them become fans. I think that's an important thing to realize as we think about fandom, is that fandom is also related to this cult of celebrity, or this cult of genius. So I don't have a specific answer as to when it came about, but I think we have examples all over history of people liking a performer, artist, or genius, and wanting to stay in a relationship with that person's creations.
So is it fair to say that we've had haters for as long as we've had fans?
Oh, 100%. I mean,
we've had haters since literally like at least 0 AD or whatever the fuck, when a grown-ass king was like, nah, that baby that was born in a barn needs to die. So like, yeah. Cain killed what did Cain killed Abel, right?
Yeah.
4 people on earth. And he was like, yeah, we've literally had haters since haters and life existed. And, Satan is the original hater.
Yeah, I think there's that's almost like a perennial thing. As long as there's someone
Actually, Ruby, do you think that God was hating on Satan, or Satan was hating on God?
I would probably say sane was hating on God. I mean, as a Christian, that's that's my sense of that story. But I think fundamentally, like if there's a disagreement somehow, that's like the nature, and that's how hate grows. So, you mentioned Cain and Abel, and the story is filled with people who just don't really want to. They're like, I'm not into this thing. There's a lot of like inter practice hate. So playwrights hitting on other playwrights, um, historians reviewing old plays, being like, this guy was drivel, and that's just been like since at least my knowledge of it is since antiquity. But maybe there's even earlier stuff like in Sumerian tablets and stuff like that. But I haven't looked that far.
I feel like the first move that the new emperor pulled in ancient Rome, no matter who it was always like eliminate the haters.
Oh yeah, there's a funny thing that happens when you have a lot of power, and you'll see this if ever we get a dictator. You'll see this. It's called damnatio memoriae, which is they'll oftentimes to delete two things: their haters and also the monuments, statues, or memories of the previous people who ruled, in order to have like a clean slate and really control like the visual space of who is to be revered or venerated. And that's happened. So you see, one of the reasons why we don't have a lot of statues from Rome or Egypt is that oftentimes when a new pharaoh comes along, they'll undergo this process of destroying all the old idols and building new ones.
I mean, in my mind, the like precursors to sort of the current online stan fandom culture are four things. One, Star Trek fans. Two, Elvis fans. Three, Deadheads. And four, furries. And part of that is
okay. Can I add a fifth that's kind of before all those, like the Beatles?
True.
Yeah.
So, I mean, Elvis comes before the Beatles. Star Trek is after all
That's
that
another
stuff.
one.
What's the? I'm just trying to place them chronologically.
Oh, Deadheads.
Deadheads is what, like, this is probably, I don't know when the Grateful Dead was playing. When is that, like post Beatles?
That's post Beatles. Like, they start kind of like moving in earnest, like 67, 68. They become a real touring concern in the 70s, especially after the death of Duane Allman, who was the guitarist for the Allman Brothers, who they were kind of like neck and neck in terms of that style of music. And then they sort of took a left turn. The Allman Brothers did once Duane Allman died.
Should I listen to the Grateful Dead?
What's that?
Should I listen to them? I've never listened to them before.
Yeah. I would just say, like, find like a Spotify playlist that says every Grateful Dead song ever and hit shuffle.
Yeah.
Like I wouldn't try to like concentrate on listening to the Dead, but I think it's like worthwhile, like getting the feel of them, and then you can decide if you like them and you want to do those deep dives.
Yeah, I mean, Dead is definitely a lot of hit and miss. Start with the song "Friend of the Devil" and then go to the song "Ripple," and those are probably my two favorite songs of theirs.
You want to just play them right now?
Or just enjoy your day. No.
But yeah, Ruby, how do we kind of get from, let's just say, like Elvis to the Lil B Task Force? And you should stop on furries because you have written an excellent essay in the past about the furry community.
Yeah. Let's talk about furries first, because I've been accused of not being a friend of furries on this podcast before. And I have nothing but respect for them. And like, I feel like you've done, the research and all. All I know is like, they're not bothering nobody. I'm cool with furries. Yeah, they're, anti-fascist and stuff. They're fucking, love everybody. Those are my guys and gals and theys and thems and shit. But yeah, can you give like, what's your understanding? Like, you know the history of them and stuff, and like, how does that come across? Like, because I feel like if you put the furries up against any other fandom, it's over for that other fandom.
It's so first of all, the lore is that the furries run the internet. Like, so people are not, it's not verified, but a lot of like the critical infrastructure, apparently, whether it be like these like databases,
they're like the Freemasons of the internet or some shit. Or?
Low key, just because if you're like they work at like data centers that if they shut them down, like half of the internet would turn off. Or
wow,
Al Gore is like secretly a furry.
Jay Electronica is a furry.
And just because if you spend a lot of time on the internet, you tend to develop some kind of like technical skills sometimes. So I think a lot of them may or may not be engineers or in the IT field. So I think
I feel like because like their suits do cost a lot, so that does make a lot of sense. Like a lot of them are definitely techies and stuff.
Yeah, I mean, so history-wise, that's why I try to place the different things. If Elvis is like 50s and 60s, the furries come around 70s. And what you start to have are these conferences with Star Wars, with Star Trek, and you have the furries sort of tagging along in some of these conferences. The first one being 1977, where Mark Molino and Fred Patton did this first conference called the Cartoon and Fantasy Organization, which I think is like an offshoot of an existing larger conference. This is held in Costa Mesa in California, and they play a screening of Animal Olympics and, do some furry costuming workshops. And
sorry, what is Animal Olympics?
Duh.
I feel like this is going to be fucked up, and that's why I ignored it. But yeah.
It's in Laken.
It's a movie from the 1970s, 1980s. I haven't seen it personally, but it looks fine. It's about animals who are participating in the Olympics.
Okay.
Sure. Yeah.
And people jerk off to this?
Well, the jerking off, I think.
Nobody said anything about that.
1980. Okay. I could see it.
It's all part of like a circle of people who are interested in cartoons. We cannot discount also the impact of anime culture, right? Bring in sort of cartoon to the forefront of the American zeitgeist. And so, you have the conferences, you have early publication in zines like Voodie from 1976, and you have just a bunch of sort of mini communities built around that. But what is notable, I think, culturally is that one of the reasons why they're anti-fascist is because in the 70s, you have, an anti-war movement, a gay liberation movement, and the furries kind of tag themselves onto this. Cameron Isaiah Dunn, in his essay Aesthetic Fandom and Furries in the 1970s, mentioned specifically how they're related to Peter Singer's Animal Liberation and the Gay Liberation Front, right? So if you're going to be at a conference and you're going to be potentially, mobilizing anyway, you might as well bring some causes along with it.
So it wasn't built around the causes. The causes were like put onto the movement. It would be like if Barb's got really into like no single-use plastic straws, like 3 years down the line.
If it was like if Barb's were growing up in the wake of the Iraq War, and then the anti-war movement was happening, and then it was like an intersection between the anti-war movement for the Iraq War and for the Barbs.
Interesting.
That it was so like kind of what's going on now.
Maybe, but I don't know.
There's that iconic Taylor Swift tweet.
Oh yeah, I just got out of jail.
Yeah, someone was like, "Sorry, I haven't been posting. I just got out of jail." And someone was like, "Why?" And they're like, "Because I refused to join the IDF."
Yes.
From one of the Taylor Swift fan pages, yeah. That is That's a classic.
But it
So-
sounds like
Yeah, like you have a look on your face like you're about to tell us that's not real, and like please don't, because I've
Oh,
already
me? I don't
decided
have
my
that
mind.
kind of information. I'm a
okay.
believer in that post. I never fact checked it, but
what were you going to say, Ruby? I cut you off. I'm sorry.
I said I never fact checked that post, but I've seen the screenshot of it. So
Such a
yeah,
good post.
it's a confluence, right? You know, why were people who were into the Beatles also maybe anti-Vietnam War, right? Like the sit-ins and the sleep-ins and all that stuff. They're just sort of a convergence of cultural and musical movements, along with some political movements.
It kind of sounds to me like you're saying that fandom culture, you know, these people who buy into it have this feeling of being an outsider. And, you know, I might be geeky, and so I'm into Star Trek or like anime or like, you know, whatever. And then so they get into the fandom as a way to find other people who themselves are outsiders.
At the beginning, for sure, because at the beginning, when we talk about Star Wars, Star Wars is huge, right? But geek culture, which we inherit in some ways from sort of anime culture in Japan, is somewhat marginal. Now, the hot take now, I guess we would say now, is that the geek culture is sort of mainstream now in America.
Mhm.
What is the most popular movie out there? Marvel, right? What is the top number one activity for children in America? Video games. So things that the guys in Big Bang Theory were doing and that seemed marginal in the 2010s now are basically the main activities of most people in America. Safe, perhaps.
We should have shut that show down when we had the chance. Should have shut that shit down. Yeah.
So it's not as marginal now, I think, as it used to be, because these franchises have just become so huge and have just essentially dominated the cultural zeitgeist for a long time.
So it's like, what were you even going to be a fan of in the 1960s? Like Spam? Like there was not enough things to be fans of, not enough products, not enough brands.
No, you could have loved Chubby Checker.
Shit.
Yeah, you
Nah,
could have
nobody was going
like
hard for Chubby Checker.
there's probably there was probably some dude in your town who was named like Chessboard McCullen, and you could have
Right.
Yeah.
The whole movie Grease is its IP is hair gel. So maybe you're right.
Yeah. You know, Puma was just restoring the reputation after the whole Nazi Germany thing. Could have liked those shoes. Yeah.
I mean, with sort of like the mainstreaming of fan culture, like when do you see that happening? Like, is it like just the song "Stan" by Eminem?
But also, that's a weird thing, because why would you listen to that song and be like, "Oh, this guy whips ass. I want to be him," but with someone who's not Eminem, but not with someone who's Eminem.
It happened later. Like, it was creepy, the song, but then later Stan's just became it became popular.
Oh no, I know that. I was
Right?
just making
Like,
a joke.
Yeah,
Yeah,
it's so
okay,
weird though.
yeah,
So-
joke keeping me honest.
It's there's a few things that part of the current understanding of fan culture, when we talk about fandom, is not only desire to consume, but also the desire to participate. And this is highly related to the notion of fan fiction, which is very popular in Star Trek,
One
Star
Direction.
Wars, Harry Potter, Supernatural, Sherlock, etc., and Tumblr in general. And the first sort of literary fandom proper is related to Sherlock Holmes. I think it was 1890s, 1870s. And what happens is that Conan Doyle kills off the character. in one of the stories, and people just go ballistics.
Moriarty throws him off a waterfall or some shit, right?
I don't think I've heard that.
Are you telling me Sherlock Holmes died in the book and they brought him back like fucking Han and Fast and Furious?
Basically. And what people do from that point on is that they want the character to live on, and so they make their own stories.
Mm.
And so when I think about why all culture now is fan culture, I think about how the barriers to creation are much lower now. So if I want to do a Nightcore remix of Nicki Minaj, I just got a download track on my computer and I could just spin that up and then like publish it on YouTube. If I want to maybe not even do music, but do a fan edit of the funniest Nicki Minaj moments on talk shows, I can do that myself. And so the participation into the culture, whether it be through the zines now online, whether it be through the conferences, now it's just chat rooms or social media, are much easier and much more facile. And so people can just go and participate in the culture. Whereas like in the 70s, you had to go to the conference, you had to give your address as kind of mailing list where a guy literally was making the zines, Xeroxing them and sending them across the United States, right? So now you could just spin up a group and have that happen, much faster, or just tweet at Nicki Minaj or hashtag Nicki Minaj and just participate in the discourse. So when I think about why all culture is fan culture, is because it is much easier to be a fan now than it was before.
Does that dilute like what being a fan means? Because now, you're a fan of like 15 people, one of whom is just a guy who reacts to YouTube videos. Like that's his whole thing.
Well, you got to be more specific than that.
His name is like, what do you mean?
Oh, do you mean the TikTok guy who like?
This is a whole genre. Anytime you type in a song on YouTube, the first result after the song itself will be like reaction, because people need to know what to think. It's not enough to just
and that's why I asked you who you were talking about, or you were just
there's
talking
so
about
many
the
of
general
them.
thing. Oh, okay.
Yeah.
There's Dad reacts to. There's one where it's like a classically trained musician reacts to. There's one where it's just like.
Well, even like Kai Cenat would be one that if I had to put a name on it, like people are fans of him because of his reactions, not necessarily because he creates art or I mean, he does content, I guess, in a general sense, but people are fans of him, which is crazy.
Yeah, it's weird how we went from like Anthony Fantano to Kai Cenat. Like,
well, what's funny is that now, like Uzi will play songs to Kai before he drops them to see if they're hot or not.
What?
And so
he's having an effect on the art.
Of course. I mean, he is both the emissary spreading the information about the song, but also an ambassador for that generation, how they listen and how they react to sounds and music.
But he builds himself as a fan.
Good. Yeah, good for him.
Yeah, I mean, I'm and he has a lot of. So we wanted to talk about the first. I don't think it's going to be a RICO charge, but Kai did something interesting. I think this summer, he posted. I'm going to be giving out some free PS4s or PS5s at Union Square. And
he started that riot in New York. Yeah,
there's a riot. There's like I think like tens of thousands of people.
Mm-hmm. NYPD was overwhelmed, man. They'd never seen anything like 14,000 14-year-old teenagers just fucking descending on the fucking land.
They couldn't do anything, right? It was total madness. And my reaction was like, I was thinking January 6th. Like,
right.
Like,
yo, there might have been more people there than there were on January 6th.
Oh, 100%. But the first artist or content creator who will harness political influence along with content creation and this new notion of fandom will potentially be able to do a popular coup or popular revolution. If you're able to direct people to a specific place like the Capitol, that's how you do a coup usually.
the thing that's craziest about that Kai Cenat thing is like you're at the front of the barrier and like, give me a PS5, and he's like, okay, he throws you one, and you gotta walk back through that entire fucking crowd with a PS5 in your arms.
And you're also giving people weapons. Like if someone's gonna try to take your PS5, you swing the PS5 at them.
Yeah. So like, yeah, that's part of the challenge. It's like he's probably recording all that shit too, and then like the cops came. He's like, "Oh, I can't produce this video." But yeah, man, it's like you either break the hell out of your PS5, beating people over the head with it, or it's just like, all right, man, you got to like the first like 6'5" dude in the crowd who's like, "That's mine now," you know.
I mean, yeah. I mean, I guess like one thing we wanted to ask you about is like, so people like Elon and Trump specifically, they have stands. It was Trump stands who stormed the Capitol.
It was America stands. Sorry.
That's true.
Oh,
But I guess,
what's
like-
the wait, no, real quick, what's the distinction?
I mean, the idea here is that they were fighting for. It's sort of a joke. I don't actually know what the exact beliefs were, but potentially any person who they thought was rightfully elected, they would have done that for. That's the idea. Like that's the way to see it. I think if you want to give them the benefit of the doubt, is that if you're in a nation where there's a fraudulent election, your duty as a citizen is to oppose it.
Yeah.
I'm not saying that the election was fraudulent. I'm just saying if, like, as a
Nah, man, you're Canadian. You're allowed to say whatever the hell you want. Like nobody will charge you for it. Yeah, you won't get in trouble.
We have less free speech rights than you guys do, just so you know. We don't really have free speech. Yeah.
What does it look like when you have people with actual power who have stands? And specifically, like Elon just absolutely has stands. And I think there's an argument to be made that Elon, one of the things he's done with Twitter is re-engineer it so that it elevates Elon's stands, in part because he was like, in order to get the most visibility, you have to give me $8 a month. And most people are like, I'm not fucking doing that shit. And then, but like Elon also is someone who has like actual global power. Like Elon can shut off internet to Ukraine at any fucking moment if he wants to. And that changes the entire trajectory of like a conflict.
The first thing is a comment on America, which one of the reasons why I would want to be a billionaire is because in America, when you become a billionaire, you could just kind of do whatever you want. Apparently, you can start talking about science, politics with no, education or anything like that. It's like because you've made a company, suddenly you can opine on all issues around the nation, transportation.
Yeah, if you were a billionaire, you knew you could get away with whatever the fuck you wanted to. Like, what's like the first thing you would do?
Human zoo.
Probably try to like, I don't know, build houses in the desert or something. Like something kind of like
Exactly what I just said.
What were you saying though?
So that's the first piece, which I think is just an interesting fact of America. The second part of it is one way to understand the Twitter purchase is that Elon, after seeing the first or the only rather Trump victory,
You can say the first.
That's factually correct.
Yeah, no, he's definitely winning the next one. Like, it's
The
unfortunate.
first time
Yeah.
he won. The second time didn't count. The third time.
So I think he had a little click happen. So he was already quite popular on Twitter, but he realized the old adage by Friedrich Kittler. Kittler is a French, not French, but German media theorist who said media defines what reality is, at least in our modern age.
Mm-hmm.
What that means is that if most media is social, to have a platform is essentially to control the flow of information and of what is presented. And both of these things essentially create people's realities. And so the potentially very generous Gigabrain thing to say here is that when you have the power to control what is presented, i.e., media, and you connect that with social media, which is like one of the gears of techno capital, you're able to generate essentially a lot of, hyperstitious motion. You're able to create, to disseminate narratives that benefit you or benefit your causes. You're able to suppress the ones that oppose them. And that is essentially a virtuous wheel for a person with a specific societal project. Now,
can we define hyperstition really quickly? Because
yeah. So hyperstition comes from Nick Land, who's a philosopher who was a member of the Cybernetics Culture Research Unit, CCRU, as well as a professor at the University of Warwick before quitting. And his whole idea was that in capitalism, you're able to do hyperstition through hype. You are able to bring an idea from idea to reality only through the power of narrative and utilizing the existing techno capital machine, right? I say I want an iPhone that can go underwater, and I say it enough times, and the market, right? The market, which is another gear of the techno capital machine, will bring it into fruition because that's what it does. That's one of its motions. And so hyperstition is the process by which an idea goes from thought to post to reality, and that loop essentially. So I think Elon kind of understood that, and if he does have a specific societal project, he now controls one of the largest points of dissemination of reality, right? We're now all drinking at these different fountains of reality. He controls one of them, and he is able to bring ideas that can move from idea to reality very quick through the hyperstitious loop, through his acquiring of Twitter. And it was only $44 billion to shape reality. That seems pretty cheap.
Did it work?
We'll see. I mean, it worked with
it's not working. It's not. This is like my question is like, do haters win 100% of the time? Am I right?
I mean, so not in America. I don't know. Elon Musk is, Silicon Valley darling in a way, and part of the mentality in the Valley, and from a lot of the California ideology, is that optimists always win. Optimists make millions. Pessimists write articles. And at the end of the day,
yeah, that's such a bar. That's such a bar.
It implicitly defines all journalists as haters. And I love that sort of framing as a way of understanding why Silicon Valley is the way it is.
I mean, because to them, it's like you can spend, and I mean, you can spend time like I do and research something and try to understand the potential benefits, the consequences, submit it to an academic journal, go to conferences, talk about it. But while you're doing all your yapping, they're just going to build the thing. And whether or not it works, they'll have built it, which is sort of the difference in mentality. And that's sort of the move fast, break things ideology that exists there. And so in that sense, is it working? Is it not? Just try.
This is your advice to someone who wants to hate?
No, this is advice. This is why I think Elon Musk is doing the thing he's doing, because hating doesn't get him. You can't generate capital from hating, or like at the scale that he wants.
Yeah, I was about to say, watch me figure it out.
Nersey.com.
I think you can build a very strong brand out of hating, right? You can build something that has like a defined, that's like circumscribed, but it's hard to build.
Wendy Williams,
Wendy Williams, The View, Charlemagne.
The vast majority of the like Bravo housewives.
But once again, that's a lot of media, right? If you're trying to build something that is going to affect the entirety of the population, you need something that makes them want to feel better about themselves. Or perhaps religion is the only sort of restrictive thing that's been able to hit mass scale. I don't know.
I mean, we're still working on Marxism. We'll get there one day. We had a pretty good run in like the mid 20th century. Some incidents occurred, one of which, many of which were opposed by the CIA and sort of spiraled. Anyways, fucking, can we talk about Stan's holding the idol to account? Like, why do they do this?
Well, back to the first framework.
Okay.
If you look at the screen and when you see Taylor Swift, you see yourself. And then she goes and dates Maddie Healy, who you perceive to be
awesome,
a bigot, right? Then you're like, no, idol, no, you're ruining the perception that I've built of my imago as it's related to this idol, and like it's breaking it because they're doing something that you don't agree with. Now, it'd be much more based if you understood why Mighty Healy could be a funny or an interesting person, but you can't do that because you're attached to something that's static when that person is dynamic. Like, one of the things that people have a hard time with artists is like when they change, both musically and politically. It's like the hardest thing for them to understand when, in fact, if you talk to most people, they change all the time. But an artist we really to be static because we form this solidified image of them and don't allow them to evolve or.
That's interesting. That's your close personal friend Drake said something similar. Every time anyone would criticize any of his music, he would say that people like the old music because they like where they were when they heard it. It wasn't anything outside of the memory that they were associating with the music. So it's good to change and grow. I mean, it's funny because he said that and then continues to make the same song over and over. But like that kind of plays into the Drake thing, which I still can't believe. You're such a smart guy. And Drake, really. He doesn't even write his own music. Like, nobody's...
Slava, do you want to know the best or my favorite part about the Sixposium? Ruby arranged to have all the participants paid an honorarium of 66 Canadian dollars.
No. Did you get
it recorded anywhere? Can I see this anywhere?
Oh yeah, it's recorded. It's coming out this week.
Oh, sick.
Oh, so this was recent. Okay.
Yeah, it was last month. I mean, for what it's worth, Slav, I think it's just if we should do this about all top 3 artists in any given decade. I think it's important for us to study them and to understand why they're popular, how they got popular, and what do they say about our culture, and what we can learn from them. And so, if you're not doing that, I can talk about Lacan for as long as you know, till the cows come home. But
until the cows come home.
But there's only so few people reading Lacan, and so many people listen to Drake. So I gotta balance the topics of study in order to sort of understand what has like the largest scale intellectually and culturally.
No, but it would make perfect sense if it was Taylor Swift or Nicki Minaj. It's just the fact that it's Drake, a guy who I feel like doesn't even know who he is. So like to
No, Ruby said like Ruby said like, yeah, if you dummies listen to better shit and read better shit, I wouldn't have to talk about Drake. So this is on y'all.
That's not my point, but I mean, I think all these people deserve.
It's okay if it is, but
inquiries. But at the same time, all the things that you bring up are not things that discredit the field of Drake studies to me. They're things that make it more important. The fact that you think that Drake doesn't know who he is and that he's so popular is, to me, that's a paper right there. Right.
Right. The most frustrating part about Drake is that it's impossible to hate on him. That's really like what it comes down to, because anything you do, he's just like slick to it. You know, it just like glides right off.
It sounds like I'm hearing a paper that you can present at the 7 Posium, which will be the next 6 Posium.
All right. Turn it down 20% over there.
But yeah, all these I think are things to explore. So I mean, it's not an endorsement of him. I think most of the speakers actually were quite critical.
Good.
So I think you just got to study what's popular.
What's your favorite Drake song?
That's a great question. Probably Lord Knows.
It's a good song.
That's a good choice.
That's Blade production. Great verse by Rick Ross.
Yes. Underrated.
Has Drake ever weaponized his fan base?
Yeah, against Meek Mill. Yeah, like that. Yeah.
I think the context of a beef is like, that's the one time where it makes sense. I don't know of any other instance where he's done that. Like compared to the Barb example, where I think it's a bit more frequent.
People weren't getting the vaccine because of what happened to Nicki Minaj's cousin in Trinidad.
Oh, what happened? Like their testicles failed or whatever the fuck?
They didn't fail. They succeeded too much. They got too testically.
Oh yeah, that's right.
But yeah, I mean, like, I'm trying to ask a question, but every time I do, all my brain can do is just think about the Nicki Minaj.
Nicki Minaj's friend's cousin's balls or whatever the fuck it was.
Yeah. They got elephantitis. It's a real thing. That's why I didn't get the vaccine.
I mean, but at what point did people sort of realize like, oh, I have stans and I can like turn them into my minions and they'll be like super hype about this?
When Lil B sent people to harass Joe Budden.
Maybe.
I don't have
anything else to say because I'm right, but yeah.
I think that motion is like quite common. Historically, it can be weaponized by celebrities who have fans, but also by political figures, by people who build militias or cults. I think we're much closer to an age of cults that we understand, where most things, when all culture is fan culture, all culture is also cult culture, in a sense. And the things that we associate with fandom start to resemble the same characteristics we associate with cults. And this is also applicable to brands, right? When we talk about Nike and the way that popular brands now operate, there are similarities in how they do their marketing and how a cult would do sort of its recruitment motions.
What do you mean by that?
It's funny because I actually have
dissertation about this. Oh.
Yeah, I have like this little zine that was called Design for Brands, which is specifically about that. And I can maybe pull it up to, I don't know if I'll be able to find this, but
yeah, if you took like the top 5 cults though and show their like, recruitment, volume versus whatever kind of metrics you want to put them towards, they'd be some of the most successful organizations of all time. Like look at fucking Scientology, man.
Oh yeah.
Yeah. Look at actually I've already said too much, so I'm not gonna have like 2 or 3 other cult religions on my ass. Like that's
like Peloton.
Yeah, this Sweet Green.
Can I interrupt for a second?
Chipotle.
Yeah.
Chipotle's a fucking cult, dude.
Slava, will you once again send Emily an illegal stream of the Sixers game? Speaking of cults.
Yeah, I got you.
Thank you.
Tell her to check her Twitter DM.
I will.
We're keeping this in the episode, by the way.
No, I mean, I think it's valid. Like, I mean, sports fandoms are also such a huge thing.
But that's different.
We're
Sports
hating on
fandoms aren't-
broadcasters. Yeah.
You could be a fan. Sports fandom is like being a fan of Nike, though. Being a fan of an institution is different than being a fan of a person, because you can't be a stan of Nike or Adidas or the fucking Sixers. I'm sorry.
But
Yeah, Nike might get tainted by like the people in the organization, but it'll never like, you know, the swoosh sign isn't gonna like, you know, drop a slur one day.
The stan being the word there. Like nobody's gonna stan Adidas.
But people stand.
Either way, you get to
stand
apply
Jordan,
your own personality.
People stand Nike. People do.
Yeah.
Do you want to start that over, Ruby?
Oh, sorry. I think people do stand brands. Like people. So stand might not be the right word because, and I think there's a blurring here because there's no. The stand is the understanding of standum is of this individual person, right? So, but there is a notion of a person identifying with a brand so much that it becomes a significant part of their identity. Sort of, you know, I have a buddy who only wears Y3. It's like, so every day, only Y3. And you probably have the same.
That's kind of hard, though.
You spoke of Wale. I think Wale only wears Nike. He doesn't like even do Reebok or Adidas. Like when sneakerhead specifically, I think they have specific things that they want, and it's not stand-up because there isn't that individual person, and I don't think that Nike could mobilize fans in the same way that Nicki Minaj does. But if Nike tomorrow says, "Hey, we're dropping the new Jordans at the Capitol," best believe it will be hella crowded.
Yeah.
Because it's that level beyond consumption, right? It's the level beyond just like going to like buy the music or the sneakers or whatever. It's like the dedication that comes to that. And it's hard to be dedicated to an idea, a brand.
So I think Nike's around. People sleep on the street to get the next pair of shoes. So I think that is
true.
That's like dedication. You don't get that for Skechers.
That was kind of what I was getting at before, like, whereas, like, I guess, like, standing a brand or whatever, like, it's just about, like, a brand can't do anything itself, like, you know, get canceled for, like, some egregious shit. People who work for the brand can. But the brand itself, like, whether it be Nike, whether it be even, like, let's say Skechers or whatever the fuck. Even if they like have a creep as their spokesman, like, yo, they drop the creep as their spokesman. And like, that's that. Yeah. Whereas like a person like, you know, there was a point in time where we did have Bill Cosby stands and he disappointed the shit out of them. And a lot of them swear to God he didn't do that shit. But it's like, yeah, Nike itself, like the people behind Nike can make you look stupid, but Nike itself can't. Just as a company.
I think
whereas like Bill Cosby as a person, and like, yeah, I guess it's like the cycling of people too, because like whoever the fuck is a CEO in Nike isn't going to be that forever throughout the course of that like company's history. He'll die.
I think if we discovered that Nike was doing some illegal labor practices like employing children, tomorrow everybody would boycott them.
I mean, maybe.
I mean, we kind of found that. We kind of found that out already, and it didn't happen.
I'm messing around.
Yeah.
I love that. Okay. Yeah. What would Nike have to do? I mean, like, the United Fruit Company overthrew like at least one South American government, and I still eat bananas.
They'd have to do some like. Usually it's like when it's like founder-led companies, like when Dolce and Gabbana were homophobic, but if they're still around, you know, they'd have to do something. I think the labor violations now are not enough. Like if a bunch of people died in one of their factories, maybe not enough. There's got to be something big. It's got to be big. It's got to be bigger than the pleasure you get from wearing the shoe, essentially. So.
And I think the evidence of this is that the main fallout of Kanye leaving Adidas is not people not buying Adidas's. It's like people
Kanye didn't really
stories.
leave Adidas. Adidas kind of left Kanye.
All right, the departure of Kanye from Adidas. Like the main effect was not people being like, "Oh wow!"
The way Uncle Phil used to make Jazzy Jeff depart from his house, like
It was what was the effect of Kanye leaving Adidas?
$3 billion, I think.
I mean, I think the main fallout was just that there were a lot of stories reported with embarrassing details, making Kanye look erratic and making Adidas look like an overly indulgent parent who finally was like, "Okay, that's it. I'm taking your keys away."
Mm-hmm.
I mean, the stock went down. They lost a bunch of money. At least that
really?
quarter. I haven't looked at the latest results. But I think brands go out of favor all the time and they close all the time. We've been in a weird situation now where I think there's been a persistence in some of these brands, but to fall out of favor or to be canceled as a brand, I think sometimes it's not even you do anything wrong. You just are no longer an it brand. You're no longer popular. Like Mango or hundreds of stores who we used to go to as teenagers that are no longer in business.
American Apparel.
Yeah.
Well,
that's for different reasons.
But I guess in that way, brands are closer to religions than they are entertainers.
Mm-hmm. I think that's if we were to make a spectrum of affiliation, one is to organizations and one is to individuals. Brands would be closer to the organizations, but some brands really straddle it, usually through the being founder-led. So,
how far away do you think we are from like somebody around this generation of pop stars and stuff just decides to be like, yeah, fuck it, I'm God, and they just like recruit their own followers and they start their own religion, and no one knows how to stop their like 12-year-old child from becoming a Swiftie. Not to say that
How's
Taylor
that
Swift
different
would do
than
this on her own, because I'm not trying to get sued.
I mean, John Lennon tried it.
Yeah, but it clearly didn't work.
Chrissy Teigen's husband.
But I'm saying, like, how far away from like at least something like fucking Mormonism, where it's like a pop star can get like the Mormonism longevity?
I don't think when people try to predict the future, one of the things that happens is that I think we often get the theme right, but just the execution is hard to predict. What you're describing to me right now is really not far with what's happening with Taylor Swift. Like, if there's a Taylor Swift concert in a country and people from all over the world travel to it, what does that resemble? It resembles the pilgrimage to Mecca.
Yeah, it's Mecca. Yeah.
If
oh shit. Okay.
If Taylor Swift were to tell us to listen to her songs 3 times, something that Justin Bieber's done when he was low on streams.
Chris Brown too.
Once in the morning, once at noon, once at night. It's I don't think these things are so far fetched. I think they probably won't occur because of like a religious incentive. They probably will occur for like a market incentive, most likely, because that's the driving force. But I think we're kind of already there. I think the main thing is we don't believe that Taylor Swift is like that she has like superpowers. But that doesn't really matter to us right now because we kind of live in a world that's disenchanted and doesn't necessarily have a need for those superpowers. Like, she has a jet. She doesn't need to be God. She could kind of do whatever she wants.
Yeah.
No, but like, what about the first one who does it on purpose? They're like, yeah, I had the voice of a generation, and also, I'm gonna make you all roll it around in the mud for 8 hours before you can call yourself a fan of mine, and then shit escalates from there.
I mean, once again, people waited outside in San Francisco for like 5 hours to get tickets. That's like not too far from something like that.
All right, fair enough.
I think the main difference here is like the theme is going to be the same, but the things that we consider to be initiation rites, like jumping in the ocean or getting your head dunked or fasting for a very long time, may just take different forms and shapes. The problem with an artist saying "I am God" tomorrow is that I have to look at the Pew Research Center stats. I'm not sure that most Americans would take, well, it would conflict with their existing beliefs. If you're smart, you never want to conflict with existing beliefs. You want to tack on your worship along with the other worship.
Well, I was going to say, you sound pretty bullish on the fact that we will have an influencer president at some point. But the question is if it's like a Kardashian or some new type of entertainer we haven't even begun to think of yet.
It's going to be Northwest.
I think that in the future we'll see a president that was like a game show host, that was highly popular in the news, and it's happened already, right? We've already had a president. It was Trump, and before that we had Reagan, who was an actor. I mean, the moment that people understand that the name of the game is no longer like a Rick syndrome is never gonna get elected. You know, it's not like we're no longer discussing
absolutely no risk, man. Yeah, no kind of personality about him. Yeah,
the physics of getting elected, I think, have changed drastically with the internet, and really can allow a person with enough goodwill, not for the whole population, 50% of it, or maybe less even than that, to get elected. And that's going to happen. I can totally see a Mr. Beast running for president. So the only thing I'll say about Mr. Beast is that Mr. Beast is in so the physics of media, right? The physics of his media is that he has to one-up himself each video in order to maintain and grow his audience.
Yes, epicness.
So let's think about this. What is the final thing that he could do?
Press a button.
It's got to be something like, pregnant, moon.
The moon is
He's got to be the president.
There's only so few things that at some point he's got to finish this spectacular, in the sense of spectacle, like arms race.
Yeah, he nukes Australia.
He's kind of like I think he's more like on a positive side. So like maybe he'd build like
Australia. Yeah. You're doing everyone a favor.
He'd build a second one right next to it.
Yeah, Australia too. Australia, like Nersey.
So I think he's gonna have to do something like that at some point. Honestly, and just for the post.
Yeah.
That's why haters are the last people that are stopping humanity from collapsing. And if enough of us hate on Mr. Beast, we will stop this from happening.
Knock on wood, honestly.
I mean, I think there was.
I feel like enough of us are hating on him right now, and there
used to be gatekeepers. There used to be people who used to be able to hate someone into oblivion, but in the techno-capitalist machine, hate gets you to a certain point of scale, but optimists make millions, pessimists
write columns.
Yeah.
Make podcasts.
So you're saying that being a hater is in fact Luddite anti-capitalist?
It could be seen as a form of resistance.
Interesting.
Because technically what you have to oppose is this relentless optimism. Because the relentless optimism of Mr. Beast is, if you hear his story, is the optimism of a boy who every day posts 3 times and does that. for literally like 5 years before anybody notices. 50 years ago, you'd have gotten bullied by your parents to go outside and stop this nonsense. If not your peers, if not your parents, or like you would have met a girl in the street and she would have said like, "What are you doing?" And like, "Oh, I make YouTube videos." And we're like, "What?" And then you'd have just been bullied by society to.
That's absolutely true. I remember.
Well, how old is Mr. Beast?
He's like 25.
Yeah.
Okay. I don't know why I thought he was like 40. But yeah, okay, never mind. Yeah,
denotes some sense of seniority.
I had a question that like I immediately got the answer to when he was 25. So like, yeah.
Yo, one of the latest things that he did was insane. He built like 100 wells.
Does he have like someone locked in the fucking supermarket right now with all the windows?
He does have someone locked in a supermarket. Yes.
And no one's gone to check on this shit yet, from what I can understand.
Yeah,
I haven't seen anything. Yeah, he was just like, "Oh yeah, I have like someone. Yeah, I'm Jigsaw, and I got someone in prison. Fucking yeah."
Yeah, to repeat something you said to our group chat, like Mr. Beast's next video, like it can only be the Stanford prison experiments. But again,
yeah, and until he creates like the fucking I don't know why I'm blanking on a different city in California right now because there's so many of them. And I don't want to say LA, but like yeah, whatever that city or that college.
San Bernardino.
Santa Cruz prison experiment. Let's go with that one. Yeah, Mr. Beast is. This isn't just hating. Like this is really dangerous territory. Yeah, how do you know like when you're promoting somebody who's like going into dangerous territory, you gotta turn it down?
I don't know that. So one of the things that is very hard for us to do is to understand the first, second, and third order consequences. I think we're not too bad at first, but even there we fail quite often at understanding the first order consequences. But second and third, like try to think about what does it mean if what are the second order consequences for Mr. Beast to be so popular? I can't even begin to fathom. And the only thing I could say is that I don't know, but I know that it's going to be severe.
You sound as scared as I feel. So, like, yeah.
I mean...
What if Mr. Beast was like, just don't vote?
That could be bad. I don't know.
But once again, I genuinely don't know. In the context of a video, in a context of continuing this arms race for spectacular content. So, it doesn't really fit in his frame.
The CIA kills Mr. Beast, and
they would have done it already.
He didn't tell nobody not to vote yet, so yeah.
I mean, depends. I don't know. They'd have to have his fans can't vote.
True. All right, so we've kept you hostage in this room for quite some time, Ruby. We should probably let you go soon. Let me know if you're okay with me asking this, but my favorite thing, or like my favorite single fact about you, is that you were once approached by someone at a party who was like, "You seem really cool." And this was a party in Miami, and it ended with you going somewhere else and doing something else and eventually appearing in GQ. Do you want to briefly tell this tale?
Sure. I don't think I've ever told it on the record. I'm sure that this happens all the time to people, and I'm just not aware of it. I was just actually reading an article about how bad we are at quantifying how frequent things are, both on the extreme and both at the amount of frequency. We're at this party at Soho House in Miami, and it's just me and my girlfriend. We're just walking around having a good time. This woman Like, hey, I like you guys' style, me and my friend, and invites us to a party happening 2 days later. And she's like, I'm gonna get your emails. It's like 1 a.m. at this point. I'm like, okay, sure, I'm gonna give you my email. This nice, not old, but maybe like just this nice woman at this party.
You were about to guess an age that was still going to be offensive.
No, I mean she's really really nice. And I just don't know how old she is. And we give her our emails. She's like, oh, come to this party, and then she actually emails us the next day, which is crazy because I thought she was just capping. Just how when you meet someone at a party, like, oh, let's hang out or let's do this in 2 days, and you're like, I'd love to. Frankly, whenever that happens to me, I'm like, oh, I really would like to, but I know because I'm old that it probably won't. It's a shame because I actually enjoyed my conversation with you.
It's like, let's just follow each other on Instagram for 6 years, and then one of us will unfollow the other without letting them know, and the other one will find out eventually.
Yeah. Exactly. But she did follow through, and she invites us to this party, which happens to be Madonna's party on the beach for Yves Saint Laurent. And we're just there having a good time. Honey Dijon is playing. It's amazing. Free drinks and all that stuff, and dancing, whatever. And I know people are taking photos as they are at these parties, and I don't think much of it. Have a great time. Dance. Dancing a bunch and whatnot, and then the next day I'm like having breakfast or whatever, and my phone's like blowing up. And I'm like, what's happening? And I look on my phone, and I don't have any notifications, so I can never tell what's happening. So I go on Instagram, and a bunch of my friends were like, you're on the YSL Instagram. I'm like, what? And my friend and I were just like posing. I think he's wearing like all white and I'm wearing all black, and it's a photo of us, and it's like the list of guests is like Raph Simmons, Hailey Bieber, Zoe Isabella Kravitz, Lord Leon, Adwa Boa, and Ruby Thelot and Hamza Rahim. It's just like a bunch of celebrities and me and my friends.
Sick.
Wait, how did they find your Instagram, or did you give it to them?
I didn't tag me. They just put my name. They had my first name and last name.
Oh, okay.
Which
and other people were just like, I'm gonna look them up. Yeah.
I'm still confused about how this works. I'm because I know I guess I gave my name to the first woman. She must have given it to them afterwards. Anyway, once again, cool stuff. I don't think much of it. I'm just like professor and writer. I just like, if I'm gonna get a picture taken for an Instagram, I love YSL. I wear a lot of Yves Saint Laurent anyway, so I was just really stoked. And then I don't think much of it. And then I get a DM like a few days later being like, hey, but from this woman who, from her Instagram, I see that she works there. She's like, hey, what's your email? I'd love to invite you to something that we're throwing. I'm thinking they're doing like a thing in New York, like an activation or some kind of like invite me, like a party or like, I have no clue. I'm not in this world. And I give her my email, and a few hours later I get a message saying, we'd like to invite you to our presentation in Paris in January. And I'm like, that's crazy. And it's like December at that point. I haven't even booked any flights or anything. I've nothing prepared. And I'm like, oh shit. And I'm starting to think like, okay, I need to like get some clothes for this presentation. It's going to be their fashion show or whatnot. And so I started on Grail. I'm looking for like vintage Yves Saint Laurent pieces, just to show that I know my shit. And I'm looking at these different pieces, and I ended up buying this like suit, and like two suits actually, just to see which one I like the most. And I go to the tailor, I get everything tailored. I buy my tickets, and I do all this because, that's what I would do. And then as I'm emailing them back and forth, I'm not getting any answers from them. Well, I haven't heard back in like a few weeks, and it's very close to January now. And I emailed them, and they're like, "Oh, which city are you going to be flying out of, so we can get your flight? And also, by the way, this is your hotel, like this extremely fancy hotel in Paris." And I'm like, I've already bought my flight because I'm an idiot, of course, and I didn't realize that they were like flying me out. And then I'm like, oh, well, I'm flying out of. I was like doing this hack. I was doing this like hackathon at MIT. But
Okay.
I was in Boston. I was in Boston. Like I'm flying out of Boston, but I'm going back to New York. And once again, because I don't know, they're like, oh, by the way, just make sure you come the day before because we're gonna dress you. And I've already bought the suit. Anything, I still have it, but I wear it all the time. And so yeah, they fly me out. You know, this is like, there's a guy with my name on a thing, comes picks me up in a Benz, and like, and like drives me to the thing. I go to the fitting. I get to try all the clothes from the new collection. Like, which one do you want?
That's so sick.
Yeah, motherfucking Showtime over here.
Yeah, I mean, so they end up dressing me from head to toe, and the car comes to pick me up at the hotel, drops me up in front. I do the photo call. The guy before me is Steve Lacy, and it was like yelling at Steve Lacy.
Okay.
And there was like fans and people all around just like screaming for Steve Lacy, and the next person is like me, and of course, I doubt that they were reading my furry essay, you know, things like that. But it was a great time.
You don't know that. Yeah.
I was actually telling a few people about it, like at the event, and people were, I think, humoring me, and like it's an interesting topic. I just don't. But so I go there, I see the show. I'm sitting essentially front row next to a bunch of other really, really cool and good looking people, and yeah, so I get my photo taken in GQ and GQ France and like a bunch of other publications, and
I sent our chat the GQ slideshow you appear in, but there's like one specific photo from that night where you're like, it's just you they're taking a photo of, and you're like boring a hole into the camera person's soul with your eyes in like the coolest way possible. Like you absolutely killed it at this. Sorry. Continue.
Thank you. I mean,
Drew, you sound like a bit of a stan.
I may be a Ruby stan. Who knows?
Ruby, incite him to violence. Quick.
Tonight, the Capitol.
Yeah. Go kill a politician or whatever the hell.
He's in Pennsylvania. Start with the moose.
But yeah, so that's that story.
All right. Well, this has been another edition of the Nersey Guide to Ethical Hating. Ruby Justice Thelot, or I guess it's Tello. I've been saying it. Okay, I've been saying it wrong. But thank you so much for joining us.
Wait, real quick. What's one thing you hate?
Oh, yeah. What's one thing you hate?
Oh, so, okay. By the way, me, big hater.
Okay.
Of what?
Of so many things. So many things I don't rate.
First three things that come to your mind that you hate.
Those big like Stanley mugs with the sippy thing on them. Like, I don't know if you know
one of these. Yeah.
Not exactly that. Maybe, I don't know if that's what.
Oh, you're talking about the one that like somebody's car burned down and the cup was in there.
No, it's something that people who want to stay hydrated, because it's the straw, with the straw. I don't like. I think it's undignified as an adult to be sipping from a straw during the whole day.
Oh, the ones that are like that. They're like your entire day's worth of water, and they have inspirational messages.
I mean, as a society, we've become totally undignified, frankly, and I think it's a shame. So I think a lot of things that I hate are things that I deem to be just like, undignified. Make a little effort. You know, it's I'm here, you're here. Let's pretend that this is something we care about. I don't like. I'm much to my dismay. A lot of the information that I see on TikTok is wrong and erroneous, and it's my hater gene is like wants to stitch all of them, but a lot of them are smart. They don't allow you to stitch. I think there's one of these weekends I'm gonna pop a Vyvanse and just like go hard, just like every single video that's incorrect.
Just ruin some teenager's entire algorithm.
I just think it's so important to just like Google stuff and research before you go online and post, but not everybody has the same dedication to the craft. And then there's a lot of content that I heavily dislike, and so if you were to look at my actions on TikTok, it's mostly not interested because it's infuriating when you why are you trying to tell me about watches? Fuck off. And so yeah, I'm a hater in that sense.
So would you say that you are also a hater of anyone who believes they know more about watches than you?
No, because a lot of people do. And a lot of people have more and better watches than I do. And they have the access to them. And, you know, like, I'm never going to hate on a person who has like a watch blog, but don't try to get me to buy a Zenith. Like, I'm just...
Okay. So, like, kind of to rephrase Drew's question, it's not so much about people who you definitely know more about watches than you, but like, what if it's like somebody like you're not too sure of, and you're like, yo, I don't think that motherfucker knows more about watches than me, and you hate on them, regardless of verifying that fact.
It could be any topic. Like it could be like also like theory or literature or anything that I'm interested in. I know that I don't know anything because there's so much to know. But if you talk about the one thing that I do know in this immense field, and your information is not correct, I'm gonna not interest in you. There were these girls, and this is my only comment on TikTok, who were like, go to this store in Chinatown to check out old vintage watches. And I took the train and I went there and it was dry. There was
if you had to get on public transportation, it's already a no.
I was like, I would never use this. I was like, girls, this place was not it. I don't recommend anybody go to this place. There was nothing. It was dry. And I had to be a hater and a poster, a posting hater, which sucks, but had to do it.
Well, you have to be an honest member. You have to be an honest member of your community. That's what you need to be first and foremost. And it sounds like you were fulfilling that. Yeah,
you're doing your service.
Yes, we are all saluting you now.
Yeah. What was it? Hove did that, so hopefully you don't have to go through that. Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah.
Thank you for coming on, Ruby.
Thank you for having me.
Yes. This has been the Nersey Guide to Ethical Hating. I've been Drew, and my co-hosts are
Lacan.
You can say our names. Like I don't. Yeah.
I don't want to steal valor by saying your name.
You're not going to steal valor by saying my name. Like yeah, it's whatever. Slava. How do you pronounce your last name again, Slava?
Lacan.
Yeah, my co-hosts have been. Yeah, my co-hosts have been Trey Freud and Slava Lacan, and our producer is Joe Zizek. And thank you very much.
Still Dostoevsky.
Yeah, still Dostoevsky. Yeah.